Hi there, friends. Settle in for a few minutes, let the noise fade, and listen closely. A story is about to begin. For 10 years, I carried out orders no one even whispers about in their sleep. I came back, and my wife was working like a servant in the house I bought for her. She didn't recognize me, and my own son ordered security to throw me out beyond the gates. So I dialed a number I hadn't used in a decade and said only 2 words. Code red. We begin. Where are you listening from? Write your city in the comments. I'm curious how many states, how many countries are with us right now. The autumn rain had been falling for 4 hours, fine and stubborn, when Robert James Bennett pressed 1990 into the keypad at the front gate. The year he had married Margaret. The screen blinked red. He entered it again, more slowly this time, letting his finger get used to buttons after 10 years in a world where there had been no buttons, no name, only a number. Denied again. The system locked. Well, hello, house, he muttered, pulling a multi-tool from his pocket. It was one of only 2 things he still had on him, besides the faded photograph of Margaret tucked inside his jacket. The second was a combat knife with a stacked leather handle resting deeper at the small of his back beneath his coat. Don't recognize your owner? That's all right. We'll sort it out. The service panel on the gatepost gave way in seconds. The magnetic lock clicked, and Robert moved along the path, slipping around the motion sensors hidden in the honeysuckle bushes. The same sensors he had installed himself years ago. His knees ached. His lower back sent a sharp jolt through him every time he bent, but his body remembered the route, even in the dark, even after 10 years. Instead of the warm glow of the floor lamp in the sunroom, the house throbbed with violet neon and trembled under electronic music. The oak shelves in the study were gone. Above the fireplace, where his grandfather's ceremonial saber had once hung, there was now a portrait of Daniel on the bow of a speedboat, holding a glass and posing like a man convinced the world owed him everything. In the main foyer, a woman in washed-out gray clothes was on all fours, scrubbing a red wine stain with a toothbrush. Robert recognized her hands before he recognized her face. The little finger on her left hand curved slightly inward, a family trait he remembered by touch. He had held those fingers when they buried their first child. The woman flinched with her whole body and tucked her head into her shoulders. "I'm sorry, please," she whispered without looking up. "Don't tell Daniel. I'm begging you. I'll clean it. I'm almost done. He'll cut my portion if he finds out I didn't finish." "What portion?" Robert's voice came out steadier than he expected. "Lunch," she answered, as casually as if she were talking about the weather. "But it's all right. Sometimes he lets me finish the leftovers in the evening, if he's in a good mood. Just don't tell him, please." The lights in the foyer snapped to full brightness. Daniel Bennett appeared on the grand staircase, 40 years old, wearing a silk robe, a glass in one hand and a gold phone in the other. Behind him stood 2 guards in black, heavy men, slow men, hired muscle with no discipline. "What is this?" Daniel nodded toward Robert, as if he were another stain Margaret had failed to scrub away. "Alex, take out the trash and check his pockets. If he stole anything, break his fingers." Then Daniel looked at his mother. "And you, back to the utility room. If that stain isn't gone by morning, you're sleeping in the shed. Do I need to repeat myself?" "Danny," Robert said quietly. That single word made the guards slow down. "What did you call me? You bum?" Daniel grimaced. "Alex," Daniel snapped. "Do I have to do it myself? Summer at Lake of the Ozarks." Robert continued, standing still. "You were 12. The boat flipped near the rocky shoal. A cut on your right shoulder. 14 stitches. I put them in myself. No anesthetic. A crescent-shaped scar. We joked by the fire and called it your father's autograph. Take off the robe, Danny. Show your guards your shoulder. Let them decide who's standing in front of them. The glass slipped from Daniel's fingers and shattered across the stone floor. Silence held for 3 seconds. 4. And Robert saw it in his son's eyes. Not shock, not joy, but calculation, fast and merciless. If his father was alive, then the house, the accounts, the whole life Daniel had built collapsed. The lie was more useful than the truth, and Daniel chose the lie before the shards of glass stopped sliding across the floor. Vanessa Bennett came down from upstairs, moving like a woman who was used to being obeyed. She was Daniel's wife, and she carried herself like the mistress of the house. She tossed a laminated death notice at Robert's feet. "Fraud," she said carefully. "He found the family online and came here to test his luck. Danny, call the police." Wait. Daniel was already pulling a compact pistol from the pocket of his robe. His hands shook. At 16, he had cried from the recoil when Robert tried to teach him how to shoot. 24 years had changed very little. 10 seconds, Daniel forced out. "Get out. Danny, you're holding that gun like a fishing rod." Robert shook his head. "I taught you better. Grip lower, elbow to your ribs. Finger off the trigger until you're ready to aim. You forgot everything." 9. "All right, I'm leaving." Robert raised his hands, palms open. "Just let me spend the night in the shed. It's pouring outside, and from what I can see, you don't have guest rooms anymore, just mirrors." Daniel nodded, not out of mercy, but because he wanted the scene over quickly. He didn't understand that he had just let the enemy inside the perimeter. He also didn't know Robert had already memorized the 6-digit code the guard had entered to disable the alarm. The utility shed, once Robert's workshop where he restored motorcycles, had become a dump. Cardboard boxes, broken furniture, garden tools, and a bare bulb dangling from a frayed wire. Robert spread out a tarp and lay down, sliding one arm under his head out of habit. Near midnight, the door creaked, and a small, hunched shadow slipped inside. Margaret Bennett, soaked through, held out a dry crust of flatbread wrapped in a napkin. "Eat quickly," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "Vanessa counts everything down to the crumbs. If she notices something missing, she'll lock me downstairs." Robert broke off a piece. It tasted like dust and rot. He swallowed and nodded. "Thank you, Maggie. It's very good. I haven't eaten anything like this in a long time." "Really?" She looked at him with timid delight. "I used to cook well. I played Rachmaninoff too. Can you imagine? I think I did. Or maybe I only dreamed it. Sometimes I mix up what happened and what I dreamed." "You didn't dream it," he said softly. "You played. You cooked. You hosted charity dinners."
"How do you know that?"
She lifted her eyes to him, and something alive flickered in them, frightened by the sudden flash of its own memory. "I heard it from someone," Robert said. "Someone who knew you very well." "You have kind eyes," she said thoughtfully, "like my husband's. He promised he'd come back. He didn't, of course, but he promised." Robert took her cold hand and squeezed it carefully so he would not hurt her twisted fingers. He said nothing. Words were useless, and the promise was not ready yet. At dawn, he took position near the kitchen window. Margaret was already limping around the kitchen, setting the table with trembling hands. Daniel and Vanessa sat across from each other, each buried in a phone, ignoring the woman who had given birth to one of them. Margaret reached to place a spoon beside Vanessa's plate. Her hand didn't obey, and the silver clattered loudly against the tile. Vanessa did not shout. She did not raise her voice. She slowly lowered her eyes to the spoon, then to her mother-in-law. When Margaret bent to pick it up, Vanessa extended one foot and drove the stiletto heel into the back of Margaret's hand. shifting her full weight forward. 5 seconds. 10. Margaret opened her mouth without making a sound. Daniel sipped coffee less than 2 feet away, never looking up from his screen. Robert had already calculated the path through the frame, neutralized both of them. Then he saw the blinking light of the camera beneath the roofline. On the recording, it would show a homeless intruder attacking the lady of the house. Police would arrive in minutes, and Margaret would stay here forever. He pulled his hand back from the glass and memorized everything. The debt was growing. When Daniel and Vanessa left, Robert found Margaret in the laundry room. She was folding sheets with one hand, hiding the injured one in the pocket of her apron. "Let me." He gently took her hand. "No, please, it's nothing. I'm just clumsy now." She tried to pull away, but he held her carefully and firmly. "Maggie, you have a fracture. 3rd metacarpal. Without a splint, it'll heal crooked. Are you a doctor? Something like that?" He rolled up her sleeves and froze. Her arms were a map. Yellow bruises were fading, giving way to fresh ones. On her forearm were 2 parallel stripes, deep and clear, about 3/4 of an inch apart. "A pool cue," he breathed. Margaret yanked her arm back. "Daniel practices his swing in the hallway," she rattled off, the words fast and memorized. "It was my fault. I walk too slowly. I get in the way. He's teaching me to move faster. And he's right. I really have slowed down. My legs aren't what they used to be." "Maggie," Robert interrupted, "no one has the right to hit you. No one. Not with a cue, not with a hand, not with words. Do you understand that?" She looked at him for a long time without expression, the way people look when the word right has lost all meaning. "You're a strange man," she finally said. "Kind, but strange." Later, when she was carrying a basket of laundry down the stairs, Vanessa shoved her with a short, practiced motion. Robert ran toward the crash and found Margaret at the bottom, her ankle twisted, an abrasion on her forehead. He checked her pupils, uneven, not because of the fall. That injury did not produce that pattern. He bent close to her face, breathed near her lips, and caught something faint, sickeningly familiar. Something that had no business being there under any circumstances. He recognized the smell before his mind shaped the word. The rage that had burned inside him for 2 days stopped being hot. It cooled to the temperature at which decisions are made once and forever. Robert found wooden slats in a toolbox, cut 2 pieces to the right length, tore a strip of cloth from an old rag, and splinted Margaret's hand with care. The same care he had once used to stitch the shoulder of a 12-year-old boy beside a lake. "If anyone asks, you fell by yourself," he said, looking into her eyes. "Not one word. Promise me." "And you?" she asked suddenly. "Will you tell someone?" "I'll do more than tell someone, Maggie, but not now." She nodded obediently, not fully understanding. Robert adjusted the bandage, stood, and went to gather the intelligence that would turn everything he had seen over those 2 days into a document that left no room for excuses and no room for mercy. In the morning, Daniel found him by the shed and pointed toward the overgrown yard. 5 acres, manual cutter, no gas mower, just your hands. Miss one strip, and you go to bed hungry. Consider it rent for your luxury suite. 5 acres. Robert blinked and dragged 1 foot. Generous. "If you don't like it, the gate's right where it was yesterday." Robert nodded and shuffled to the workshop, where he found an old push mower, a rusted beast from the 90s, forgotten among the garden junk. The starter cord gave in on the 5th pull, coughing up a cloud of black smoke and a sound that surely shook every crow in the county. The dull blades tore at the wet grass instead of cutting it. Each pass required so much effort that Robert found himself thinking that in 35 years he had disarmed mines, opened weapons caches, and negotiated with warlords. But this machine seemed to have been built with one purpose: to finish off whoever tried to start it. Daniel watched from an air-conditioned window and saw a poor old man performing penance. He did not see an operator conducting a search grid, strip by strip, marking blind spots in the cameras, overgrown bushes that muffled sensors, and the service area behind the kitchen where overflowing trash bins stood with their lids open. A stack of unshredded envelopes stuck out from under a garbage bag. That kind of carelessness, in Robert's world, killed people more reliably than bullets. He conveniently coughed and died near the service door. Robert bent with his back to the cameras, and hands that moved faster than age should have allowed pulled a handful of envelopes from the bottom of the stack. Under the canopy of an old willow, he opened the first one, a demand letter from a private lender, a credit line of $1.2 million with interest rates that would have given any bank auditor a heart attack. The second contained shadow accounting with aliases: Greek, gray, iron. In the third were credit statements maxed to the limit. The lock on Daniel's car trunk yielded in 45 seconds to a sharpened piece of windshield wiper metal and a paper clip. In his briefcase lay a purchase agreement for the house. Market price, around $3.8 million. Document price, $2.3 million. A liquidation sale. The buyer was a disposable shell company. Closing date, Friday, 3 days away. The $7 million Robert had earned with blood and decades under fire had evaporated in 8 years. Speedboats, failed schemes, designer robes, and vanity. Now Daniel was selling the last thing left to a criminal buyer for 60 cents on the dollar. And for that, he needed Margaret's signature. That was why they were drugging her. Sane enough to hold a pen. Too confused to ask questions. At 3 in the morning, Robert climbed the iron lattice on the west wall, gripping thick ivy that held his weight. The balcony latch surrendered to a thin blade in seconds. Daniel snored with his mouth open. Vanessa slept in a silk eye mask. Robert slipped into the walk-in closet. The safe, the kind advertised with the words, "Reliable protection for your valuables," and 3 little stars printed on the box. During training, he used to crack safes like that on bets. Blindfolded, his record had been 28 seconds. This time it took 40. Shameful, but enough. The door opened. Inside, besides a stack of cash and a pair of necklaces, lay a note. Code 1234. The safe code, written on paper inside the safe. Robert did not know whether to cry or applaud. On the shelf below stood rows of small bottles, orange pharmacy containers, and clear vials with handwritten labels. Clonidine, benzodiazepines, sedatives. Together, they were a chemical sledgehammer to the nervous system. Suppression of will, erosion of memory, total obedience. They were not only starving his wife and beating her. They were performing a chemical lobotomy. Robert took 1 bottle of each, closed the safe, and left the house through the balcony without disturbing a single sleeper. In the shed, he pushed aside the workbench, counted the 3rd floorboard from the wall, and pried it up with his knife. The hidden compartment he had made years ago was still there. The satellite phone was heavy, brick-like, connected to a network that existed on no map. He dialed a number he had not dialed in 10 years. "This is 746, code red. We begin." The pause lasted the length of a dozen shared operations. "Rob?" Mike Lawson's voice sounded like the voice of a man hearing from the dead. "We thought you were gone. The file says killed in action. The file contains incorrect data. Mike, I'm back. And I have what you might call a situation." He delivered the full report, dry and clean, the way he had done in the field. A forged death notice, stolen assets, assault, clonidine, sale of the house on Friday. Mike did not interrupt. When Robert finished, Keys began clicking on the other end. "I'm pulling the file," Mike said. "Your son declared you dead 10 years ago, filed papers claiming his mother was incapacitated, and gained access to the accounts. This is felony fraud on a massive scale, Rob. And the drugs? That's attempted murder. The buyer? Shell company. Let me run it. I already did. Tariq Khalil. Remember him? Afghanistan, 2002. Mike went silent. Yeah, him. Mean, offended, and with a long memory. Rob, this is scorched earth. There's no way back for your son. He leaves this either in a federal prison or in a box. Robert looked at the bruises rising on Margaret's sleeping hands. He had made his choice. Mike. He crossed the line. I'm going to bury him under it. The next morning, Robert played the broken man, hunched shoulders, shuffling gait, a dragging leg. He approached Daniel, who was smoking nervously in the yard and glancing at his watch every half minute. "Daniel," Robert said, keeping his voice weak, "forgive me. I could use $200 for medicine. My back's giving out. $200. Daniel exhaled smoke and looked him up and down. Big money for a dead man. Then he stuck out one foot in a designer loafer. "See that? Dirty, grass stains from the lawn you cut so badly. Clean it. Get on your knees and wipe it off. Show some respect, and maybe I'll think about it." Robert slowly lowered himself onto the stone. His knees throbbed against the hard surface. He bent over his son's shoes and began rubbing them with the sleeve of his work shirt, breathing heavily, making the effort look almost unbearable. His mind was working in another mode. Italian leather, handmade, about $1,800, heel worn on the left side. He plants his foot crooked, hard sole. On wet stone, he'll slip instantly. Factory lacing, never relaced once. A son who cannot tie his own shoes orders his father to clean them. Well, at least the size is normal. He didn't get that from his mother. When Robert grabbed Daniel's ankle for balance, his right hand made a motion it had practiced 1,000 times. A microtransmitter, the size of a grain of rice, peeled from its adhesive backing and pressed against the inner seam of Daniel's pant leg. Daniel crumpled $200 and threw it in Robert's face. "Take it and get out. You disgust me." Robert crawled to the bill, pressed it to his chest, and muttered thanks. Then he closed the shed door behind him, put in an earpiece, and heard his son dialing a number. The arrogance in Daniel's voice had been replaced by a tremor. "Tariq, don't send your people. Friday at closing, $2.3 million, cash. I'll pay everything back, every dollar. Just call them off." A pause. An answer to a question Robert could not hear. "No, the old woman won't cause problems. She's drugged to the gills. She doesn't even know what year it is. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her." Another pause. "And my father?" Daniel gave a nervous laugh that cut off Robert's breath. "Don't worry. After the sale, I'll take care of him. Fall down the stairs, maybe. Heart attack. Accidents happen to old people all the time. He's been gone for 10 years. I'm just correcting a clerical error." Robert removed the earpiece. His son had just signed his own sentence with his own voice. Friday came under a leaden sky. At 11:45 in the morning, 3 black SUVs rolled through the gates. Tariq Khalil stepped onto the gravel, short and broad-shouldered in a pinstripe suit, and looked not at the house, but at the land, estimating how much concrete could be poured over it. "Welcome, Tariq." Daniel stepped forward with his hand out. "It's an honor." Khalil walked past him without looking. "Demolish it by Monday." "Where are the documents?" In the former study, Khalil sat at the head of the table in Robert's old chair and nodded to an assistant. The paperwork spread out in a fan. Margaret was brought in, loaded with her morning dose, dressed in a cream suit, a bruise hidden under a thick layer of foundation. Vanessa seated her between herself and Daniel and pressed a fountain pen into her crooked fingers. The pen slipped free and rolled across the paper, leaving a streak of ink. "She looks half dead," Khalil said with a loud sigh. "Are you sure she can sign?" "I don't do business with incapacitated people." "Everything's fine. She's just tired." Daniel's voice jumped an octave. "Mom, take the pen. Mom." Vanessa slipped one hand under the table and dug her nails into her mother-in-law's side. Margaret gasped and began to tremble. "Sign," Vanessa whispered through a pasted-on smile. "Sign it or you'll sleep outside with the dogs. No blanket, no food. Do you hear me?" "I don't want to," Margaret forced out through the chemical fog. "I want to wait for Rob. He promised he'd come back. He's dead." Daniel loomed over her. "He died and left us with nothing." He grabbed his mother's hand, wrapped his fingers around her wrist, and forced the pen down toward the paper. That was when heavy measured footsteps sounded from the hallway. Every eye turned to the doorway. Robert Bennett stepped out of the shadows in a custom-tailored three-piece suit. A white shirt and a burgundy silk tie fitted around the shoulder holster beneath his jacket. The gardener was gone. The broken old man was gone. He took the contract from the table, read the address and figures aloud, looked at his son, and tore the agreement in half, then into quarters. The pieces scattered across the table. "The sale is canceled. This house is not for sale. Not today. Not ever." Khalil stared at him, and the color slowly drained from his face, leaving gray behind. Robert said the call sign and the code known only to those who had worked under sealed clearance. Khalil remembered Afghanistan. He remembered what had happened to men who crossed people with those call signs. "You have 3 minutes, Khalil." "Remember 2002? Daniel stood against the wall, the blood leaving his face so fast his skin turned waxy. Vanessa froze with her hand still near Margaret's side, her fingers curled in the air. Khalil, a predator used to sensing danger before it arrived, slowly buttoned his jacket and did not move farther. Everything in him, instinct, experience, animal sense, was signaling one thing. Someone had entered the room who stood far above him in the kind of hierarchy where a mistake costs not money, but life. 3 seconds of silence. Then every entrance to the house collapsed at once. The front door blew off its hinges under a battering ram. The rear glass wall exploded inward. The side door was kicked open. Through every opening poured men in black tactical uniforms and body armor, rifles ready, red laser dots dancing across the room and converging on Daniel. 6, 10, all on him. Daniel lunged toward the chart table in the corner, ripped open the middle drawer, and pulled out a nickel-plated revolver. "Back off!" he shrieked, his voice no longer a voice. "I'll kill you, you're dead, and you'll stay dead. Put it down, son." Robert did not move. "You don't have the guts. I do." He didn't have time to cock the hammer. A gloved hand seized his wrist. The revolver spun across the floor and stopped at Robert's feet, and Daniel was slammed face first into the oak parquet. The sound of his breaking nose was wet and short. Khalil was dragged out from under the table, his hands cuffed behind him. His bodyguards were already lying on the gravel in the driveway. Mike Lawson entered through the shattered glass wall, not in a suit, but in full gear, rifle across his chest. He looked around the room and nodded to the medic already kneeling beside Margaret. "Poisoning," the medic said, checking her pulse. "Starting detox, IV and antidote. We need to stabilize her rhythm." The needle entered Margaret's skin, and it was the first touch in that house in years that caused not pain, but help. Robert sat at the head of the table, took out a cigar, clipped the end with small cutters, lit it, and exhaled a column of smoke above the sprawled body of his son. Daniel was lifted to his knees. His face was a mask of blood, and mucus. He looked at the men in tactical gear, then at his father, and there was horror in his eyes deeper than ordinary fear of death. He understood he was not dealing with the police. Robert laid 3 documents on the table. "Your mother's toxicology report," he began, without raising his voice. "Clonidine concentration 10 times above the safe limit. Tremors, rigidity, and eventually heart failure. You weren't just keeping her trapped, Danny. You were poisoning her slowly every day." He placed his finger on the second document. "Benzodiazepines, sedation, suppression of will. Enough to make her sign papers. This isn't elder abuse. This is conspiracy to murder." Then the third. "Notice of full freeze on all your accounts, assets, and digital wallets. Every dollar is locked." "Dad," Daniel gurgled through the blood. "Please, tell them to stop. I'll sign anything. I'll give it all back. Just don't let them kill me." Robert took a slow draw on the cigar. "Kill you? No, son. Death is an ending. You don't deserve an ending. You deserve a middle. A long, painful one." He leaned forward. "You thought you could erase me, declare me dead, steal my life, torture your own mother. Do you know where you're going now? To the facility, Danny. The one in the middle of nowhere.
Remember where I spent 10 years?
A place without names, only numbers. 18 hours of work a day. No sunlight. No appeals." Daniel was dragged toward the exit. His heels caught on the floor, leaving streaks. His screams faded when they loaded him into an armored SUV. He disappeared, erased the way he had once erased his father. Vanessa, left without money, protection, or a husband, instantly changed roles and crawled toward Robert on her knees with her hands folded. "Robert, please." It was all Daniel. He forced me. He threatened me. I loved Margaret. I tried to stop him. Robert took a ring from his pocket. An alexandrite set in platinum, lifted the night before from Vanessa's vanity. "Give me your hand." She extended her left hand with hope in her eyes. Robert gripped her fingers tightly. Vanessa howled. He placed the ring in her palm. "This is the last beautiful thing you'll see in your life, Vanessa. Women's maximum security prison in northern Alaska. Cold, hard, and you eat only if you work. You'll mop floors, scrub toilets, and do the same work you forced Margaret to do. 20 years above the tree line." Vanessa threw herself at him with her nails out, but an operator caught her, swept her legs, and locked the cuffs on before she hit the floor. Her screams mixed with the rumble of the convoy engines and dissolved into the leaden sky. Robert saved Khalil for last. He sat across from him, drew his combat knife, and began cleaning his nails. Khalil flinched at every movement of the steel. "Commander, I didn't know," Khalil muttered. "I swear, your son showed me documents, said you were dead. If I'd known it was your house." "I believe you, Tariq. My son is a convincing liar. He fooled banks, courts, and the government. No surprise he fooled a mid-level loan shark like you. I'll forget the debt. I'll leave. You'll never see me again." "No," Robert shook his head. "Debts must be paid. That's the code, isn't it? If you forgive $3 million, you'll look weak. And in your world, weakness is a sentence." Khalil went still. "You will officially buy the debt. If my son ever gets out, he'll discover he still owes you $3 million, plus 20 years of interest. That debt will hang over him until his last breath." Khalil understood. He accepted. Robert cut the zip ties from Khalil's wrists. "Get out of my house. If you ever contact me or my wife, I won't send a team. I'll come myself." Khalil ran so hard gravel sprayed from under his shoes. Robert ordered the house cleared. Vanessa's designer things, her clothes, her jewelry, everything was sent through a charity foundation for families of fallen service members. "Sell the house or tear it down," he told Mike. "I don't care. This place is infected. A year later, Robert and Margaret lived in a log house in a remote Montana valley. A fireplace, a view of mountains and a lake, pines outside the windows. Margaret recovered about 80% of her cognitive function. There were days when she confused dates or asked about people long gone, but she recognized her husband, felt safe, and played Rachmaninoff again on an old upright piano. Over a secure line, Mike reported, "Daniel has been working at the facility for 12 months, 12 hours a day. He cries at night and asks about his father. Vanessa is in Alaska, mopping floors. Appeal denied." "Keep them both where they are," Robert confirmed. Khalil's debt stands. "My son died 10 years ago, Mike. The man at the facility is a stranger who stole his name. Let them learn what $1 costs the hard way." On a Tuesday in late November, Robert was chopping wood by the shed when he caught a flash on the ridge half a mile away. Light reflecting off optics. Not a tourist. Not a hunter. The season was over. He kept splitting logs without changing rhythm, then went into the house and kissed his wife on the cheek. "I'm going to check the fence on the north ridge. Looks like a branch came down. Dress warmly." She smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "I think it's going to snow. Do you want a thermos? I'll be back soon." He reached the ridge 40 minutes later, circling the position in a wide arc. The hired man lay in the brush, wearing a leather jacket and pointed shoes, completely useless in 5-degree weather, his teeth chattering into a phone. "I see the target." Old man chopping wood. Old woman inside. No visible security. Easy job. "When do I start?" "Cold," Robert asked from 10 feet behind him. The man spun around, dropped the phone, reached for his belt, and a second later was on his knees with a broken elbow, gulping frozen air. "Who sent you?" "Silence!" Robert stepped on the broken arm. "No." A scream. Tarik's son, Emil. He thinks his father showed weakness. Robert picked up the phone. "Hello, Emil. Your father is a wise man. He knows when to step back. You're a stupid boy who sent a child to do a man's work. Listen carefully. If I see one more shadow on my mountain, I won't wait. I'll come to you and burn everything down to the foundation." Robert tied the hired man to a tree by the road, called the police from the man's own phone, and crushed the device under his heel. When he returned home, he checked his clothes by the woodpile. No blood, only snow. He took a deep breath and pushed the adrenaline out. In the kitchen, something warm and sweet drifted from the oven. Margaret sat at the table, knitting a scarf. "You were gone a long time. Fixed the fence. Everything's fine. Replaced one board. You look tired." She looked at him with the kind of gaze no one could hide from. "Your hands are shaking a little." He looked down at his hands. They were steady, but she saw not the body, but the soul. "I'm just cold. It's brutal out there." She stood, came over, took his hands in hers, and began rubbing them quietly and gently. "You work too much," she said. "You think you have to protect the whole world. You only have to protect us." He stood without moving and remembered the moment when the medic had pushed the antidote and the milky veil in her eyes had begun to melt away. Margaret had opened her eyes, looked at him, and slowly, flickeringly recognized him. "Rob," she rasped. "I'm here, Maggie. I'm here." She touched his cheek with cold fingers and asked with an innocence that shook him to the depths of his soul, "Did you buy the tangerines? You promised you'd bring some from the market for tea. You've been gone so long. 10 years of captivity, betrayal, and poison did not exist." Her mind had restarted at the last moment of happiness, the morning he left. She had asked for tangerines. He promised he would stop at the market. Then he left for 10 years. Tears burned in his eyes, but he swallowed the breath and nodded. "Yes, Maggie, I bought them. The line was very long, but I'm home now." She closed her eyes. "Good. I missed you. Don't be late again. He kissed her forehead. Never, I promise. Never again. And now, standing in that Montana kitchen, feeling her small hands warm his frozen fingers, Robert Bennett understood something with absolute clarity. The mission never truly ends. The perimeter is never completely safe. Peace is only the space warriors carve out between storms. But he bought tangerines every week now. He brought home a full mesh bag from the county market, and Margaret arranged them on a plate by the window. They lay there bright orange and almost absurdly festive against the Montana snow, like a promise he had no intention of breaking again. If this story made you think about family, betrayal, justice, or the promises we make to the people we love, tell me in the comments what you would have done in Robert's place. And if you want more stories like this, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one.